Focus on the habits that you want to develop. Make sure that you're not asking yourself to do too much, maybe one habit to start with. Make sure that that habit is very achievable. It should feel like it's too easy to do so that you can be super consistent with it. Hit like 70 to 80% consistency. Don't try and get some sort of perfect streak, because then when you break it, you're totally demotivated. You know, if you're going to do something every day, don't make it every day, make it kind of every day. You know, if you miss 1 or 2 in a week, it doesn't matter. Kind of every day. 6 is kind of every day, 2 isn't. You know, you kind of get a feel for it, but be consistent, make sure it's achievable, and then just sort of build from there. And again, that definitely applies to pros. I was working with a pro who won on tour, I think it was either this year or last year, hadn't really done lots of strength and conditioning for a while and wanted to restart like mid-season this year. Obviously mid-season's a hard time to restart. So we got him to do like 3 or 4 exercises as part of his warm-up before he hit shots and went out on the golf course, every single day that he did that. So it was like, you know, it's 4 tournament days plus maybe a practice round day, or pro-am day. And so it's like 5 times a week he's doing 4 exercises, and then just after a month start adding a little bit more weight, and then after that start adding a bit more in terms of session length. And you know, he's like smashed it from a consistency. And I can guarantee if I had given him 3 or 4 mammoth 1-hour workouts to fit into tournament weeks, he would have felt like crap after the first week. He would have burnt out within a month at best, and he wouldn't be coming into the gym anymore. So like, don't be that guy.
Dan Coughlan, welcome to the Golf Yourself Healthy podcast.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks very much for coming on. Just firstly, a word of thanks to the team here for having hosted us, or rather giving us the access to this space. This is our second trip to this facility, having interviewed one of your colleagues, Amy O'Donnell, a few months ago, having a really good nutrition conversation. So for my viewers and listeners, I can't remember the episode number off the top of my head, but it wasn't that long ago. So if anyone wants to learn about how to eat a bit healthier, I've actually been making some of Amy's recipes ever since. Was she here actually?
Yeah, she was here today and yesterday, and they were making some today actually. They were making some energy balls in the kitchen.
Yeah, it's the energy balls. They're the ones that really are some of the best ones that I've tasted of her recipes. But anyway, we are here we're at Woodhall Spa, the National Golf Centre. It's a centre of excellence, effectively, right? Do you want to say a little bit about this space and what you've been using it for in the last couple of days?
Yeah, so this is our England Golf headquarters. We have all of our national players here. So we have the girls, the women, the men and the boys, and then the senior teams that come as well for training. It's also open to regional players, and some professionals come and use it as well from time to time. And here we have a range of world-class facilities, really. So we've got a great gym, which we're in at the moment. Mm-hmm. We've got putting area, we've got classrooms, we've got a driving range, then we've got a fantastic short game area and some great golf courses. So we get our national squads together, run training camps, have a lot of different coaching support, from nutritionists to golf coaches, psychologists, and all sorts of other things in between. Like this week, we've also had some breast health experts come in and do fittings with the players, and we have a range of other experts that come along and support the teams.
Was that Lewis? I reckon it was that the guy that I just saw out in the...
Yeah.
I've not met him, but I knew he was at there was the Congress in Edinburgh earlier in the year that Andrew Murray invited me to, so... Yeah, some fascinating work in that space.
Yeah, so Lewis is doing his PhD in that domain. He comes from a golf background. He's interested in biomechanics, and he's working with Jo, who's a researcher who's dedicated basically her life to breast health and performance in athletes, as well as general population as well.
Amazing.
And so they were both here today helping our players.
Fantastic. Very good. A question I got asked when I guested on a podcast recently, which is a really nice starter for 10, was, who are you, what do you do, and why do you do what you do? Yeah. So I'm going to pose that question to you so that my viewers and listeners get to know Dan Coughlan a little bit better?
So I do quite a range of different things. So I work with England Golf and support them from a science and medicine perspective across all of the national teams. But then I help our England Golf performance team oversee the regional programs as well with all our upcoming players through the pathway. I also work on the DP World Tour. I run their strength and conditioning physical preparation. So we've got a few different coaches that come out and support the players year round on tour. As part of that, I support the players directly, I support their teams, and I also work on facilities, and that would include the DP World Tour events, Challenge Tour events, but we also cover the Open through the RNA, the Women's Open, and Ryder Cups and all sorts of different events. And then my company also provides the strength and conditioning support to the LET as well, which is kind of a similar setup to the DP World Tour setup. And then I work independently with a few players and organisations on top of that.
Thanks for that. The so just to sort of not caveat or contextualise this for the conversation you or I are having today, I think predominantly my audience tend to be sort of everyday average golfers who, in many cases, I think like most golfers, aspire to get better, at golf. And what I'm especially curious about, and I'm sure a lot of my viewers and listeners are too, is for one, I mean, for instance, you were just referencing there, you work with professional players, and if you go on like the ETPI Performance Unit Instagram page, you will see any of the household names doing various exercises and things to really sort of get the best out of themselves. But whilst I appreciate that for us everyday golfers, our reality is not really the same as them, I'm pretty convinced that I've always been convinced that there are things that we can learn from the professionals, both in our game of golf and how we strive to be the healthiest version of ourselves in day-to-day life as well. So whether that's mentally or in this case sort of physically as well. So I guess I in the simplest way possible, and I do appreciate that everyone's different and physiologically, I guess if you were to maybe just first of all, like, when you consult with a player, what does a consultation kind of consist of? What does a conversation look like when you're working with a golfer to say to help them fundamentally?
Yeah, look, I think first off, it's the approach is going to be very varied with the professionals, but I think sometimes there's a misconception that the professionals have it easy with being able to fit in this stuff. Realistically, they're playing, maybe up to 30 tournaments in 30 different countries per year, traveling with week-long competitions, and they have huge time pressures. Golf's one of those sports where you can play it all day. It's not like running where you can only run so long until you got to rest. So their opportunity to fit in strength and conditioning and other physical preparation is limited. Their opportunity to be really good with their nutrition is limited because they're in different countries, different food types. They've got access to different foods all the time, through coming through airports, service stations, restaurants, whatever. So it is difficult for golfers, or professional golfers, maybe different from the everyday, but we certainly have to come up with a lot of solutions that make it work in what is quite a time pressured life for the player, which I think is going to draw parallels with your everyday golfer. A lot of those lessons will transfer.
I was going to say that I just straight away, and just about everything you've said there, like for instance, myself and producer Lewis are here. When you're on the road and we've got a 4-hour journey back, it's going to be a struggle not to have unhealthy food in a service station on the way back, Dan. It's like, sure. And also like just recently, I think generally I'm a person who, hence my sort of company name and brand name, Golf Yourself Healthy. I believe in health and well-being, and I know the importance and the value of it, but it is a struggle a lot of the time when you've got a young family or a busy life to sort of have everything in balance and give the time to exercise, give the time to good nutrition. Yeah. But I guess, and again, like you say, the parallels between the everyday person and the professionals is you got to have faith. If you put that work in, you're going to see the results. I mean, even in the last 3 or 4 weeks, Peloton is something I swear by. I've been using my bike for ages, but I've kind of parked that for a little while because I'm suffering with dad back
Mm-hmm.
quite a lot at the moment, right? And genuinely like arching over the cot, putting my daughter in there and stuff. I've noticed that by working on my core consistently over the last 3 weeks and lifting a few weights and things, and not just like a blindly, I'm following a bit of a program.
Yeah.
Even in 3 weeks, I notice a bit of a difference, right? So
yeah, so I think, you know, with that in mind, like you say, first thing is people need to buy into the idea, because it's not going to sort itself out. You have to want it to happen. You have to allocate the time. You have to believe enough to make it happen.
Yeah.
But then there are realistic sort of solutions around it that, you know, again, we use with the pros. You know, the pros might be out playing 5.5 hour rounds. Then they've got practice around that for a couple hours on a tournament day. Then they've got to eat somewhere and all that. And they've probably got some sponsorship or media commitments through the day as well. And so they might have a very limited amount of time to work out for different reasons to you, but still limited. And so we'll have solutions for that. Like some players might work out as in part of their warm-up. So, you know, again, there's videos on the ETPI page of loads of players doing that, like Rory at the Ryder Cup, up at 5:30 in the morning doing a half an hour workout as his warm-up for the Ryder Cup on the Sunday morning. So your players are squeezing it into little moments that they have before they play golf or after they play golf, so it doesn't take excessive time. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the solution for you, but it's certainly, you know, you've got to be mindful about what works rather than making something unrealistic fit. I think in terms of like, to answer your question around what a consultation looks like, it's hugely varied, but most of it is just around speaking to people and getting to know them, really. You know, it might be what they want from me, what's motivated them to have the conversation, but a lot of it is going to be around like, what are their constraints, what are the barriers, both in terms of the things that they know and understand, maybe some of the things they don't know yet. Maybe there's some barriers there from like misconceptions they might have, and you're just trying to read the situation. So I think, you know, when you first meet them, you get more out of the chat than you do out of any kind of assessment. A lot of the time I won't assess people first time I meet them, because it's kind of no point in wasting an hour of a consultation doing 45 minutes of assessment if I could spend an hour chatting to them. So often there's more chat, there's watching them work out, there's just kind of getting to know them, and then the testing might or might not come later depending on the player. So yeah, I think understanding people is the place to start most of the time.
Yeah. Just reflecting on one thing in particular you just said there. When you and I spoke maybe a month or two ago in preparation for planning this podcast conversation we're having now, I was saying to you that I'm at the moment working through a health coaching qualification that I do hope I'll be able to take to my community and work with some golfers. And, you know, and something I've learned from that training so far has been, if you're a coach in whatever domain that you're coaching in, fundamentally, in something you were saying there about, you know, getting to know the person, it's a human-centric business, right? It's understanding the motivations was key, and what the desires, the aspirations, the motivations are of that individual, and you know, ultimately not trying to go down a cookie-cutter approach of saying, right, okay, we're just going to prescribe you this kind of plan because it will look different according to every person. Is that, am I hearing you right? Yeah,
100%. And I think, you know, it's the most important part of good coaching. I think sometimes people can fall into the easy habit of just giving the same solutions to everybody because it doesn't involve you having to think too much, right?
Yes,
but the best coaches will work hard to understand the people in front of them so that they can find solutions that suit them. You're there to solve a problem for the person you're working with, and that means you need to understand them.
And in that regard, what's the important lesson or kind of light bulb moment that you've had in your... Because are you classified as a coach, essentially, in a way? Or are you...
Yeah, I mean, you can call me what you want, but yeah, I coach people. Yeah. Something I'm really passionate about now is that everything we're discussing, like getting to know the person, the lifestyle, the barriers, finding solutions that practically fit into people's world rather than... you know, expecting people to sort of bend to my preferred method of doing something. So I'm very much based on, you know, what's the problem? Let's solve it together, as opposed to this is the method that will solve everything, which is
Yeah.
a lot of the marketing you see around, whether it's fitness or coaching or whatever, is do these things and everything will be fine. And that's kind of not how I approach it. And so I suppose that would be the light bulb thing. It's a big part of my coaching philosophy, but it didn't happen in a moment. There wasn't a moment where that, suddenly popped into my head. It's been a gradual career process.
I go through phases in my life where I go almost like New Year's resolutions. It's like, right, I'm going to throw the kitchen sink at this thing this year. And I started working with a golf S&C person essentially, and he had like an online offering, much like a Peloton type thing where you pay like a monthly subscription. And at the time, I mean, it was good. The content was good and I got some value out of it. But in the moment I thought, what I like about this is how it's very golf specific. Okay. But actually, if I'm really honest, what I found was, maybe two things. One, because it was almost so laser focused on golf, it kind of it made me lose a bit of interest somehow, because I just thought, I almost want to keep my fitness broad. What's the advice to sort of work generically, for want of a better word, and sort of like almost like what are the muscle groups, or what are the parts of our body that almost have a universal benefit, where you're going to see some gains maybe on the golf course, but you're also going to feel better, maybe look better. Do you get where I'm going with that?
Yeah. I suppose first off, the question you've asked is almost impossible to answer. Like, I'll give it a shot in a second, but it's almost what I've just sort of spoken against. Is do these 5 things and you'll be fine.
Of course, I appreciate
it's
that.
almost the like anti-philosophy that I've got. I think I can give you a good answer in a second, but or at least a reasonable one. If it's not fully satisfactory. But I think to start with, everyone has different problems, everyone has different constraints, and so I think that everyone's solution should ideally, not every time, but ideally look a little bit different. And so that means that if you don't work with someone who can support you with that, you just need to respect it in yourself. So what are my constraints? What are the things that I want? Some people would love it to be really golf specific. The app might have been perfect for them. Some people, maybe it starts to feel a bit too much like the hobby's taken over your life and you just want to break and have a separate thing where you switch off, in which case it's best for it not to be golf specific.
That's it.
Some people might need to lose a lot of weight to be healthier. Some people might need to get a lot stronger. Some people might have injuries. All these are going to have different answers to your question. So I think to start with, it's understanding what are my constraints, what are my motivations, and whether you have support or not, just making sure that you're paying respect to them. So if you're aware you're a bit boom and bust, trying not to be too boom at the beginning might help you be a bit more consistent. Then I suppose if I'm to give you some sort of general points around golf, I'm very much not like a methods person. So I don't care if you do a squat with a barbell or deadlift with a trap bar, or you do a leg press in a machine at the gym. As long as it's making your legs strong, it doesn't matter. Same with any number of other exercises. So the exercise doesn't matter. Do things that, well, it does a bit, but like it doesn't fully matter. Do things that you are comfortable with and you engage with. But generally speaking, golfers need some base level of fitness. They can't be totally unfit to get the best out of themselves and to have a nice long happy healthy career. So you need some level of fitness, but it's the same sort of level of fitness as you need just to be a healthy person. It's not like a marathon runner. So if you're very unhealthy or very unfit, then eating a bit better and doing some cardio will help. But if you're quite fit, then getting a lot fitter probably won't help from a, again, like a running or cycling perspective. So do enough to be healthy. And then the rest of it really is just get strong and get powerful, if we're going to be sort of broad about it. So do things that challenge your strength, which are going to be, again, there's a bit of a caveat to everything, but relatively low rep, heavy stuff. So it might be squats, deadlifts, leg presses, that kind of stuff on your legs to get them strong. Do things like bench presses, overhead presses with barbells or dumbbells, or if you're not comfortable with that sort of stuff, machine work if you're in a gym, or body weight stuff like press ups, but things that are just quite challenging, get a bit slow, get a bit hard. Then at another time or within the same session, do some more power fast stuff. So do some jumps, do some throws. And if you tick in all those boxes, you're generally fit, you do a bit of lower body strength work, some upper body strength work, some lower body jumping and stuff like that, and some upper body throwing or power work, you'll be some of the way there. And then, if you're working with Rory, you might be a lot more granular and specific. But for most people, that's going to move them in the right direction.
Yeah, it's I'm glad you've answered it like that, because you've just helped me realize, like, in the one breath I'm recognizing that everyone's different, and then I'm like, give us some generic advice, please, Dan. It's sort of very counterintuitive, but I take away from that, like I was saying to you before, so I'm interested that you mentioned weight loss, because certainly that's something for me personally at the moment, where, like, we produced some content recently, we put it out on YouTube, and I watched it back and thought, I've got gut right now, and that's my motivation genuinely, is to sort of lose a bit of weight, feel better in how I look, which do you encounter that when working with any golfers? How, like, because again, in my mind, thinking about the professionals, I'm just thinking I'm naive enough and making assumptions, which is always naive and dangerous, to go, probably all they really want to do is just hit the ball further, but maybe not. Like, actually, maybe they do have some insecurities.
I think there are lots of points sort of packaged away in that, but I suppose to start with, and again, this is me pulling myself up on, I suppose, not being too general, weight loss might be important for some people who are very unhealthy and need to get healthier.
Yeah.
Weight gain is important for a lot of golfers, though, because body mass can help you hit the ball further, and it can help you be more robust. And unlike running, you don't have to move your mass really fast. So whether you're 80 kilos or 70 kilos and swinging a golf club, it's not going to directly negatively affect your performance like it would in running. But obviously more weight might help, because you might be more grounded, more stable, stronger, especially if that's muscle. So weight loss isn't universally a good thing or universally a bad thing, and depending on the person, depends on what you need. So I suppose that's kind of a start point on that. I think there are certainly plenty of golfers who are interested in body image, but that's partly because people do exercise for more reasons than just performance all the time, and that doesn't matter whether whether you're a professional golfer or not. You're a human, and some people want to put on a bit of muscle, some people want to lose a bit of weight, some people want to do a certain kind of exercise because it makes them feel good, not just because it helps their performance. And I think this is where it's really important to get that kind of individualized approach which meets the person, and also to recognize that there are lots of methods of changing or improving someone's performance, and you need to suit the method to the person.
There was a post you put out some time ago now on your personal Instagram page, which the quote was, "The tide is turning." And if I understood it right, it was put in the context of how, maybe historically, within the golf space especially, there's been a lot said about flexibility and mobility, but actually it seems that whether it's science, research, there's just more pointing in the direction of, strength work is perhaps every bit as valuable, if not sort of arguably more so. Can you sort of go into a bit more depth around that?
Yeah, I think when I first got into golf a little while ago, it had started to engage with fitness. I'll call it fitness rather than anything more specific. That fitness was largely led, I'd say, by medical practitioners. You had physiotherapists, chiropractors, people like that who got into the space, and they were using, I guess, more medical type approaches to deal with performance, which isn't always the best mix, because medical practitioners are obviously super important. I work with them very closely on tour. Yeah. But if you take a typical physio approach 20 years ago, it would have been giving, not necessarily now, but it would have been giving a lot of mobility work, looking at kind of quality of movement in certain screens and that kind of thing. And then it would have been followed up with exercise that look a bit more like rehab, because they used to bringing people back from injury and doing lower level exercise. When you do physio qualifications, and certainly back then, but still true to today really, they don't do much in the way of strength and conditioning education. They don't learn a lot about the strength, the power, all that kind of stuff. So because of the sort of history of how it evolved, there was a lot of stuff in golf around stretching, balance exercises, standing on one leg on Bosu balls, all this kind of stuff, which doesn't really fit with kind of the performance literature. The performance literature and practice kind of clearly demonstrates that for most people, most of the time, not universally true, strength, power, those kinds of things are much more important than whether you can stand on one leg on a Bosu ball. Flexibility can have value, but it's less generalizable value. generally, if you get your legs stronger, it will help you in some way with golf. If you get your hips more mobile, it might or might not. It depends on your swing. It depends on your context. So I'd say to start with, it was much more medical movement, flexibility, low level, not particularly hard training. And now it's certainly moving much more in the direction of strength, power, proper athletic training. You put Rory in a gym with a bunch of Olympic athletes, you wouldn't necessarily be able to pick out the golfer other than knowing what he looks like.
Something I'm drawing out of this is it's things are just contextualized to the individual. Ultimately, in the world that you're in, you're constantly looking at. I'm sure that you and your team will be researching things or unearthing new discoveries. And what are some of the most compelling and almost sort of jaw-dropping did you know data points, or things that people just wouldn't have otherwise, sort of common misconceptions even about our bodies or about our performance in golf?
There's a few ways of answering, but if I start with some misconceptions and link back to something you asked about club speed earlier as well, being like a big driver for a lot of players, which it is. We have something we call our probability of performance impact pyramid, which is basically a way of describing where impact is in strength and conditioning, physical preparation for golfers, and where the evidence kind of supports it most. And so for us, availability is the biggest reason to train for golf. So by availability, I mean you're able to play golf. Like, you're not injured, you're not sick, you're healthy. If you're not available to play, you obviously can't perform because you can't hit a shot. So the number one reason people should engage in physical preparation for their golf is so that they can continue to play golf. They're not injured, they're not sick, they're not missing days. Yeah. Which is really, really important for professionals who earn their living doing it. But it's also really important for everyday golfer who just wants to go out on the course and play. Then you've got what we'd call like durability and readiness. So durability is you can practice as much and as hard as you want without breaking down. So maybe it's not going to take you out of competition, but you feel like you can only play 9 holes and you want to play 18, or you can only do 3 hours of practice, you want to do 4 hours of practice, but the quality isn't there. So getting fitter, healthier, stronger helps you tolerate more practice, do more if you want to. And readiness is feeling like you're ready to play well. You're alert, you're not tired, you're able to do what you've trained to do. So everyone who plays golf wants to play as well as they can in the moment, and being ready, feeling good because you're healthy and you've eaten well and you're good to go is important for every golfer. After that, it's probably club head speed. Lots of players are interested in it. It does matter for performance, but obviously if you're not available to play, then you can't use your club speed if you've got it. So it's important, but maybe for most people it's not the go-to. But there's loads of good evidence to show that we can increase club speed in quite a dramatic way with the right support. And then after that, I suppose we start to look at giving players options around their coaching and swing. So if you improve certain physical characteristics, they might be able to achieve things that their coach wants them to achieve but they're struggling with at the moment. And so that's kind of next on our list. And then after that is, I guess, ultimate performance. They're striking the ball better, they're hitting it with better dispersion, and they're scoring better. But obviously that's the least predictable because there's so much that feeds into it. So I suppose for me, probably one of the big misconceptions is everyone does S&C to hit the ball further.
Yes.
And the truth is, I'd say most people do it so that they're available to play and they're durable and they're ready. And then some people want to hit the ball further.
That for me, that's probably one of the most intriguing things I've heard you say. So I speak to everyday golfers and people that I know that watch and listen to this podcast. Is we can very easily get drawn into, in the golf industry, that the mecca state is hit the ball further, and whereas actually, like you say, there's that overlap there between, when you say readiness, there's the overlap with the mental side there. Because you work on yourself physically, you're going to naturally feel more mentally ready. And this is probably going to be give me a generalised answer here, Dan.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
You see it coming, don't you? What thought would you leave people with when it comes to entering a new year and just trying to work on themselves, say physically in particular?
I think it's the same when everybody starts out, assuming that it's starting out, is trying to start small and trying to stack things onto habits that you might already have. and try not to do the boom and bust thing you were talking about earlier. And whether you're a professional on tour or whether you're an amateur, very recreational golfer, I think that applies throughout. Focus on the habits that you want to develop. Make sure that you're not asking yourself to do too much, maybe one habit to start with. Make sure that habit is very achievable. It should feel like it's too easy to do so that you can be super consistent with it. Hit like 70 to 80% consistency. Don't try and get some sort of perfect streak, because then when you break it, you're totally demotivated. If you're going to do something every day, don't make it every day, make it kind of every day. If you miss 1 or 2 in a week, it doesn't matter. Kind of every day. 6 is kind of every day, 2 isn't. You know, you kind of get a feel for it, but be consistent, make sure it's achievable, and then just sort of build from there. And again, that definitely applies to pros. I was working with a pro who won on tour, I think it was either this year or last year, hadn't really done lots of strength and conditioning for a while and wanted to restart like mid-season this year. Obviously mid-season's a hard time to restart. So we got him to do like 3 or 4 exercises as part of his warm-up before he hit shots and went out on the golf course, every single day that he did that. So it was like, it's 4 tournament days plus maybe a practice round day, or pro-am day. And so it's like 5 times a week he's doing 4 exercises, and then just after a month start adding a little bit more weight, and then after that start adding a bit more in terms of session length. And he's like smashed it from a consistency. And I can guarantee if I had given him 3 or 4 mammoth 1-hour workouts to fit into tournament weeks, he would have felt like crap after the first week. He would have burnt out within a month at best, and he wouldn't be coming into the gym anymore. So like, don't be that guy, basically.
Make it manageable is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, well, Dan, thank you very much.
No worries.
Really appreciate you giving up your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Cheers.